Doug Herbert about the legality of delaying the election.
He cannot unilaterally change the date of the election. The Constitution grants Congress, the U.S. lawmakers in Congress, the sole authority to determine the date of the presidential election. The general election, which is held since 1845, it has been a matter of a federal statute, that it has been federal law that the election has been held on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of an election year, which this year happens to be November 3rd. Any change in that election date, yeah, it can be changed, but it would take a very long process, and it would also require legislation to be enacted, ultimately signed by the president, and also then perhaps subject to court scrutiny. That ain't going to happen. What is this really about then? He can't do it. But by raising the possibility, it plays into what you've just said. Donald Trump has refused to say categorically that he would recognize the results of the November election. He's done it this year already, and he did it back in 2016, using the same phrase each time, "we'll see," sort of holding it in abeyance, as if it was an episode of The Apprentice, whether or not the president would recognize the outcome. To his critics, and this has been a long-standing fear of Democrats and some Republicans, to be fair, that Donald Trump would seek to postpone or cancel at some point the election if he were up against it. Now, Donald Trump, in his critics' views, no election, by definition, an election that Donald Trump loses cannot be a fair or legitimate election. In the Donald Trump universe, and from his perspective, the only fair election really is one in which he wins. Obviously, he hasn't said that, but that is the fear among critics, and all of Donald Trump's statements and actions suggest that that is what he is leaning to depict any defeat as being unfair. We are seeing it right now in the lead up to this November election. You'll notice in that tweet, his bogeyman, a big bugbear of Donald Trump, has been mail-in balloting, trying to say that any election with a lot of mail-in balloting, even under extreme circumstances, as have been raised by the coronavirus pandemic in the U.S., would be an illegitimate election. There's absolutely zero evidence to suggest that mail-in balloting leads to more fraudulent elections. And actually, a panel set up earlier in the administration by Donald Trump to investigate whether mail-in voting, absentee voting, whether it was fraudulent, actually concluded really not. But then Donald Trump dismantled it. So it never had a chance really to get off the ground and go further. There are also 5 states, including a Republican bastion in the U.S., Utah, which do almost all of their election voting by mail-in ballots. So the mail-in balloting has been really put forward by Donald Trump as part of this broader narrative to try to lay the groundwork for a narrative in which if there's an election in which a lot of ballots are mailed in because people can't physically go to the polls or it's not deemed sanitarily safe for them to go to the polls, that election by definition would be unfair, stacked against him and stacked against Republicans, and illegitimate.